Hello, everybody. This is Tommy Lee Hayes Brown with Rito Recognition. Today, I'm excited to present to you my friend, Charles Scherbaum, Dr. Charles Scherbaum. He's our Chief Analytics Officer here at Rito. He's an industry expert in analytics, talent assessment, performance management, and employee research. For over 12 years, Charles has overseen numerous research and analytic initiatives that have played a significant role in the success of a number of Fortune 500 companies. And as part of the Rito team, since 2007, he consults with Rito and our clients on predictive analytics and workforce metrics. Charles received his PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from The Ohio University and is an associate professor of psychology at Baruch College. Among a wide variety of courses he's taught are HR analytics, performance management, personnel psychology, and psychometrics. Charles is a writer. He's been published in a ton of industry periodicals, for example, personnel psychology, organizational research methods, Human Resource Management Review, and the Journal of Business and Psychology. One of the great things about Charles is he's able to take a very, very complicated subject and drill it down in a language and in a method that we all can easily understand. So he adds great, great value to our team, to our clients, and hopefully to you. Just a couple of housekeeping things. I will be collecting questions as Charles presents. So there's a little button there to ask a question. Go ahead and press that. That'll come directly to me. And we'll end the presentation today with your questions. If after the webinar you still have questions, feel free to contact Charles. We'll have his contact information there, and we'll also have my contact information. If you have any questions or comments or would like to reach out to Rito and have us help you out with help you execute your recognition strategy. So without further ado, let me turn it over to my friend Charles.
Great. Thanks so much, Tommy Lee, and thanks to all of you for being with us today. I'm really excited today to talk to you a little bit about how one can build a strong culture through recognition and engagement training for your managers. Obviously, culture is something that all companies think about. We know that it is truly one of the few competitive advantages and key differentiators for organizations. Your products, your processes, your branding, your marketing, those can all be copied time and time again. And usually somebody can do it quite quickly after you've invented something new, but culture is very, very hard to imitate. So it's one of the few things that truly is a competitive advantage for organizations and can be sustained over long periods of time. When we think about everyone right now is working on their millennial strategies and thinking about how to be an employer of choice and how to attract all sorts of top talent, that culture really is at the heart of that. And we know that culture is a key part of the employee's experience. Employee's experience is a key part of becoming an employer of choice. And an employer of choice is really what we need to be in order if we want to attract and retain top talent, particularly as we think about there is going to be talent shortages. I guess there is already in many industries and in many countries, but those are increasingly becoming apparent in many, many places. So, culture is something that really is a critical part of what we do. Now, when we think about culture and how do we build it, how do we create it, and how do we really make a strong and positive culture, managers really are at the center of everything. Anyone who's looked at research by Gallup or other providers of culture and engagement surveys, or you've done key driver analyses on your own employee opinion survey, know that some of the key drivers year after year are the managers and leaders of the organization. I mean, they really are the ones who day in and day out bring our cultures to life and create the experiences for the employees. If you look at theories of organizational culture, every single one of them has managers and leaders really as the ones who create, maintain, and reinforce culture. So they're really, really central to helping us achieve this goal of a strong culture to attract talent. The problem is that we oftentimes don't equip managers with the skills and tools that they need to really help institute and build a strong culture. Now that's the bad news, but the good news is it doesn't have to be that way, and that we can prepare managers and develop them to help take on this role that we need them to play in our organizations. Now, while this can easily be developed, I should say not easily, but it can be developed as a skill that managers can build, the problem comes in the way that we typically try to do it. When we're giving technical skills, most learning development departments are really quite proficient at giving technical skills, and even many of the soft skills. But when it really comes to helping managers understand how their daily interactions with their employees and with others in the organization can build a strong culture and help reinforce and maintain it, this is an area we struggle, and we struggle for a number of reasons. First of all, that the training we give managers is often so abstract that they really don't understand how to translate what they've learned from this training about how to build strong cultures into daily behaviors and routines that they can use when interacting with their teams, their employees, and others in the organization. That there's just a level of abstraction that makes it far too difficult for managers to translate into concrete things that they're supposed to do. Second of all, it's so generic that it kind of has a one-size-fits-all approach, which is true of much training. But in this case, it really doesn't target the types of things that any given manager needs to do. We can think of a lot of things that might be important for managers to do to build strong cultures. Let's take an example of feedback. Some managers really are quite good at providing feedback to their teams. Other managers struggle. So if I were to provide training, half of my employees would find the training really doesn't apply to them, and the other half might find it applies to them, but it might even be too generic for them and given their level of development. And often in kind of combination with these two is that this type of training is not behaviorally focused. So again, it is difficult for managers to translate the content they are learning in the training about how to build strong cultures and engaging their teams into things that they're actually supposed to do when interacting with their employees. A typical training might talk about how to motivate their employees, how to allow them to bring their whole self to work, how to empower them, with not any information about how they're actually supposed to go about and do that. And when left to their own devices, some managers will come up with clever and useful ways of doing that. Others will struggle and potentially give up and not try. And what we have found, and this is a question I guess we've struggled with like everyone else really for the past decade, and what we've found that it can be done, but you need to take a little bit different approach. And that what we need to do is we need to make things concrete. We need to personalize them to the individual needs of the manager, and we need to make them behaviorally focused. And if we do that, we can have a lot of success in helping managers develop the skills they need in terms of building strong cultures. And we're going to talk a little bit about the approach that we've taken, and really what we call it is personalized managerial development. And it's really based on a couple principles, and we're going to share a case study with you of one specific way in which we've developed a system that does this and implemented it at one of our clients and how it works. But I want to tell you a little bit about the principles of it. It is personalized, which means it's assessment driven. And in simple terms, that means what we want to do is first measure something about our managers in terms of their current strengths and their current developmental needs. And then we want to essentially prescribe learning and development to them that just focuses on their needs. And we won't waste time with the things they're already good at, or we won't waste time on things that they might need to develop, but they aren't really essential. And so we need to start with some form of assessment to know where those needs are. That could come from a competency assessment your organization might do, employee opinion survey. It could come from a personalized assessment that you might have as part of a talent program or talent identification program like a personality assessment. Or you could do something custom that's really tied to the learning and development areas that you're most interested in. I think a medical analogy is really useful here is that the doctor doesn't just immediately prescribe you medication. The doctor will first do an assessment and diagnostic test to understand what it is you need, and then only prescribe you what you need, nothing more, nothing less. Our system follows the same model. So first we assess individuals, okay? And then based on that assessment, we're going to prescribe behaviorally focused learning experiences. And the key is that it's behaviorally focused, so managers know what they're actually supposed to do in terms of applying and implementing these skills in the daily routines at work. And again, it's personalized to what they actually need. And so when we think about the return on investment of learning and development activities, these types of approaches have a great opportunity to demonstrate ROI because we're focused solely on the need and we're not investing precious resources or dollars into things that we already have capability in. Additionally, we have to design these learning experiences based on the best practices from the behavioral scientists. Psychologists like myself have been studying, not myself in terms of the last 100 years, but we've been studying 100 years how adults best learn. And we have a lot of insights about ways that we structure learning experiences, and you really need to develop them. For example, one key element to make learning effective is to have goal setting, is that we help people understand what it is they're going to learn. We have them learn, and then we have them set goals around how they're going to implement that learning. This is a fairly simple but a fairly critical piece of a learning and development system that can really maximize the success of implementation of learning into the daily routines at work. And lastly, that we need to evaluate if it's working. I mean, that's really the million-dollar question. When we think about learning and development, did it promote learning? Did it promote behavioral change back on the job? And did those behavioral changes produce differential results for the individual, for the groups, and for the organization? And so when we think about this personalized assessment-driven managerial development, for us, these are really the 4 key elements that we've implemented in our system. We'll share with you a little bit of how that looks. And so we want to share a case study with you. And this case study comes from a global financial services company that had a strong culture, still does have a strong culture, but they're constantly looking for ways to create a stronger and stronger culture and to continually elevate the employee experience. And they chose to, based on all of the different listening devices they had, their employee opinion survey and other tools, they decided one way was to really focus on managerial skills in creating an employee experience that reflects the culture they want to have. And they chose to focus on a particular type of managerial skill and behavior, and that was recognition skills. And they chose this for several reasons. First of all, they're trying to build a strong and positive culture. Recognition, by its very nature, is supposed to be strong, positive, and is supposed to be reinforcing of the types of behaviors that are connected to one's culture. So it seemed like a real natural place to start because we can create a lot of positive momentum. Second of all is the frequency. Unlike other forms of managerial interactions with their employees, recognition is something that can happen on a daily basis or multiple times within a day. Other forms of interaction happen, let's say, periodically, like performance reviews or feedback reviews, or as needed. So when a project concludes or when something goes particularly wrong, those might generate some interactions between managers and employees. But recognition happens very, very frequently. So when we think about we can rapidly change and build on a culture, recognition is a natural. And lastly, recognition is a part of almost every single interaction that managers are having with their employees. So for example, during a feedback meeting or during a team huddle, recognition is almost always part of those interactions. So it had a kind of a wide scope, it had a lot of frequency to it, and it was positive. And so they chose to focus on that first. And I want to share a little bit of the system that we developed for them. And that system is called Vistance Learning. Vistance Learning is really a platform that implements much of what we've already talked about. It first starts with the skills assessment, where we identify managers' recognition skills and developmental needs. For those of you on the webinar today, if you're interested in completing a recognition skills assessment and receiving a feedback report on some of your top recognition skills, as well as some developmental areas, I would be happy to provide you a link to do that. I'll put my contact information up at the end, and you can email me or Tommy Lee, and we'll provide you a link to do that. But it'll give you some insights. So if you've done a DISC or an MBTI or Hogan before, it'll give you some of the same kind of general class of information about where are the areas you can leverage, as well as where are the areas that you can build your skills further. Once managers have completed the recognition skills assessment, they are prescribed very specific learning and development opportunities. Now, this specific system was implemented in kind of online microlearning, where we gave them very specific, short behavioral learning and development opportunities that were focused around one or two specific behaviors that we know lead to more positive recognition experiences and help build a strong culture in an organization. So once the mentors completed the assessment, they are prescribed very specific learning modules that are prioritized based on their developmental need, as well as the opportunity that these skills can make a difference in the employee experience. So they're ranked prioritized both on need and importance. Managers work through their prescribed learning modules. We have a variety of post-learning checks to make sure that people actually are learning something, that they're actually implementing it back on the job, and that it's actually making a difference in terms of the employee experience and organizational performance. And it's a very positive feedback loop where managers will complete a module, successfully implement it, and then move on to the next. So that way they have time to consolidate their learning and really make it part of their daily routines. I want to share a little bit of the results that we've achieved with this system in terms of helping this organization further build their strong culture. And this is the key with this, is that this organization was starting from a position of strength. They had a very positive culture, and they were looking for ways to continually get better. And we were seeing improvements, as I'll show you momentarily. Even among the upper end of the distribution, this type of training can help move the dial. We would certainly expect to see much larger improvements as we move to the parts of the distribution where opportunities to improve are a little bit greater and a little bit easier to do. Now, one of the first things we looked at is understanding how managers who are going through these types of training were helping create work teams and environments and experiences that were more positive inside their teams. And we looked at this in a couple ways. First of all, we looked at people who did nothing. So this is essentially our baseline, our reference, or our control group. So these are the people that if we just let things take their natural course, this is what we'd expect to see in terms of some of the employee opinion results. We looked at people who started the process but never finished it. So essentially they started it and then they got busy and abandoned ship. And so they got a little bit of the learning, but they didn't get all that they needed. And we looked at people who completed the entire set of prescriptions. So this is much like when you go to the doctor, they prescribe you medication. There are people that never take it. There are people that start the medication but then stop it before it's completed its full cycle. And there are those that take all of the medication that they're supposed to take. And what we see here is that when managers complete their entire learning journey, we see much more positive employee experiences. And again, if you look at the numbers on the screen, these are incredibly strong performance, even for those that did nothing. And certainly we know that there comes a point, a law of diminishing returns, when we're looking at organizational development opportunities to improve employee experience, that when we're down in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there's lots of easy stuff that we can do. Once we start hitting the point of the mid 80s into the 90s, the curve starts to bend and all the easy stuff is done. And now we have a lot of the very challenging work of trying to develop more positive engagement experiences and employee experiences. And so managers doing this learning are able to create stronger teams that work well together, that have greater degrees of trust, and that they feel they receive more support for doing their job well. So when we certainly think about the types of things around resiliency, people are finding that they're much more supported in their organizations. We feel that they are more empowered. So managers completing this learning are able to create their teams where the employees are much more empowered to resolve client concerns and problems. And we think about any example of a strong culture, empowerment is certainly a key feature that we're really enabling our employees to move our business forward, to help our clients in the ways they need help, which in turn makes us a much more successful organization. So not only are these managers creating strong teams that trust, that work better together and support one another, the employees are also feeling much more empowered to get the job done. We also find that the interpersonal interactions between the employee and the manager are also much more positive. So when the manager completed the training, the employees felt that they're getting much more support and coaching from their organizations in order to achieve high performance. So for example, they feel they're getting much better coaching in terms of helping them achieve high performance. And we think about performance management, that this is really one of the key activities that managers need to engage in. Certainly they're much better able to do that after they receive the training. We think about some further aspects of performance management and recognition, that when managers complete the learning, they find they are much better able to give recognition that's meaningful and also more meaningful performance feedback. So managers who are completing all of these trainings are really better able to have these types of interactions that are critical for creating a positive employee experience. Now, everything I've shared with you so far is really around data we've collected from employee opinion survey data, and all of that data clearly shows that when managers complete these personalized, assessment-driven learning modules, they are better able to create more positive and strong cultures in terms of their work groups, how they interact with one another, how employees interact with the customer, as well as how the employee and manager interact together. At this one organization, we also had an independent index of employee experience that was on a metric that's fairly similar to a credit score. It goes from 0 to 800. And this was tracked over time on a quarterly basis. And we were able to look at what happened to the employee experience across the organization once the learning modules and this kind of personalized, assessment-driven learning experience was implemented. And what we find is there's a clear change. That if we look at the red line, that's the point at which the learning was implemented in the organization. We see that the line bends and increases, so the employee experience goes up quite a bit, and it's sustained over time. And this is really a key piece to this, is that there's a lot of managerial development and learning that has a very short lifespan. I'm sure all of you have had experiences where your manager goes to training over the weekend or at the end of the week. They come back on Monday, and it's as if they're a new person. They're doing new things, they're interacting with new ways, but then the reality starts to settle back in, and by Tuesday, it's as if 50% of the learning is lost. By Wednesday, another 50% of that. And by the end of the week, they're back to normal in terms of whatever they were doing. And so the learning was essentially lost. But here what we're seeing is that we have a sustained change, and that change is sustained over at least 1 year. So clearly this is a very effective learning in terms of improving the experience, but keeping it going over time. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague, Tommy Lee, who's going to address any questions that people might have.
Here I am. Thank you, Charles. We have looks like 4 so far. Milanis, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says, can you talk about some of the behaviors you've seen change, and were there any ones that were more challenging than others?
Yes, there certainly are certain types of behaviors that are much more difficult to change. What we have decided to do is to make everything very behaviorally focused. And one of the challenges you have is that when we focus on these very abstract behaviors like give good feedback, managers have no idea what good feedback means because they may never have received it themselves, and they don't know what it looks like to give good feedback. So we find that when we break down these complicated behaviors into very specific tasks and behaviors, we have a lot more success. So for example, instead of saying give great feedback, we can start with give specific feedback. Tell the individual specifically what she or he did, what was the impact of those behaviors, and why you would like them to repeat that in the future. We find that when we get to that level of specificity, it's much easier for individuals to understand the behaviors they are supposed to do and then be able to execute them.
Excellent. That was a great question. Vlad says, what would be your top 3 talking points when I talk to my CEO for her to understand the importance of recognition?
Okay. Say
Top
it is
3.
Top 3. It is human nature. Human beings want to be appreciated. That is a basic, fundamental need. It is one that human beings generally are not good at. Number 3, when we're good at it, we can drive business results. And I'm going to sneak a quick 4th one in there.
Okay.
It can be developed. we can help people get better at this.
Yeah, I think those are all perfect. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that it can be developed. I'm not good at that. I don't know how to say the right things, that type of thing. But it's just baby steps. It's just baby steps.
Exactly.
Start off by like, how about pronouncing their name right? You
Yes.
know, I would appreciate that if you pronounce my name right, manager. That type of thing. So you're absolutely right. It is a teachable skill. And
It's
it's a skill that'll transcend out of your workplace just into your life.
mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's the small things that really make the difference.
Yep, absolutely. Anne says, at my job, rewards, recognition, and engagement are often used interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a Cliff Notes version of the differences?
Sure. We'll start with rewards. Rewards typically imply something tangible, like I have given you something because you did something for me. I give you something because you've done. A bonus at the end of the year. Some programs have various forms of kind of that give and get. Recognition in the truest sense is not about give or get. It's about I see you, I appreciate you, and I acknowledge what you've done. It's oftentimes best executed simply with words.
Mm-hmm.
There is no reward to it. And engagement, really, we think about it, it's a state of being where I'm motivated and energized and able to bring my whole self to work. And rewards really aren't going to achieve that kind of state of being, but appreciation most certainly will.
Excellent. Now I'm going to put you really on the spot. You ready?
Uh-oh.
Use those three in a sentence.
Use those three in a sentence.
Rewards, recognition, and engagement.
All right. To engage is to appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
To reward is not.
Got it. Did you say recognition?
Recognition, appreciate.
There you go. Appreciate. Yeah. Good job. Sorry for putting you on the spot.
That's all right.
But you're one of the smartest people I know. I knew you could handle it. Tara says, what comes after the prescribed learning is done? Is there more learning to do, or is it just over?
That's a really great question. So in our system, we have currently these micro learning modules, really around 20 very specific behaviors. And we have a kind of well thought through learning process where managers really wouldn't complete more than one module roughly every 5 weeks, because we want them to learn, to integrate, consolidate, and apply. So, for most of our clients, it's 2 to 3 years before they finish. And actually, we're in the process right now of rolling out a whole new suite of modules with some partners of ours in which really focus more on the engagement side of the equation, a little bit less on the recognition side. So there's always constant opportunities to learn and to grow and to do more and more. There's no fear that you would run out anytime soon.
Right. And this one just popped up. Do you consult or chat over Skype? I would love for you to talk to my management team.
Yep, we'd be more than happy to. We regularly talk to our clients and other organizations about recognition, how to measure it, how to use it to drive organizational effectiveness, how to look at the return on investment, and really how to develop that capability and create the capacity in your organization to develop that capability. So if that's something of interest to you, when we put our contact information up, please reach to me, and I'll be more than happy to talk to you about that.
That might be an opportunity, as you had mentioned earlier, for the recognition skills assessment.
Yes.
As a doorway into talking to that management team, give them the assessment, and then you can sit and talk and consult and see where you see the gaps and where they want to take it from there.
Yeah, and much like that tool, you can use a lot like people will do with the Myers-Briggs and the MBTI, where it's about getting some insight about what people's preferences are for recognition and what my natural skills be. And my skills and my preferences as an individual may not align well with yours. So I might be well-intended in the recognition I'm providing you, but it really misses the mark because it's not what is meaningful to you. And having those dialogues and insight about each other really can take behaviors that we might already be doing and elevate them with very little effort.
Great. Well, that's it. If you guys have more questions, even after the webinar or even after the rebroadcast, you'll be able to see Charles's webinars at Rideau.com within the next couple of days. Go ahead and ask them. We're going to put up our Charles's contact information. Oh, you did. There it is.
Yep.
You can reach out to Charles. Again, I'm Tommy Lee, and I'm at TommyLee@Rideau.com. And Charles, thanks again for just another enlightening session. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone for being with us today, and please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Have a great day.
Great. You too. Take care.